Hey, sisters, welcome back to a down and dirty episode on how to communicate boundaries. Now, if you're anything like me, this is somewhere that you've probably struggled your entire life, either fearful of creating boundaries, getting flexible with your boundaries, not creating them at all. And there are a number of reasons that I'll get into in another episode, but I want this episode to be pragmatic, useful, applicable right away. So, most of us have feared creating boundaries because we don't want to ruffle feathers. We don't want to upset someone. We're afraid of someone's reaction. We're afraid of losing love, connection, safety, and approval. We weren't modeled healthy boundaries, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. So, I'm going to share with you today a very fast and easy way to understand where your boundaries are and how to communicate them. A lot of times we have no idea how to even understand where we end and someone else begins, meaning we have no idea what our boundaries are. So if we don't know what they are, how do we communicate them? We first have to recognize what our boundaries are. So I have a really clever exercise to help you decipher where your boundaries are. And what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of paper and you're going to divide it into three columns. In the first column, or at the top of the first column, you're going to write I value. At the top of the second column, you're going to write I need. And at the top of the third column, you'll write I will honor this by, or my boundary is. So what you're going to do first is you're going to, in that first column, you're going to write down what your values are. So what are your top values in any given area of your life where you've had a hard time creating boundaries? So let's take an example in the area of relationships, and let's get even more specific. In the area of romantic relationships, what do you value? Do you value quality time? Do you value physical touch? Do you value words of affirmation? Do you value um, in-depth conversation? Do you value honesty? So these are just a few common examples. So in that first column, go ahead and write your values. And in that middle column with what you need, you're going to create or write down a need based on your value. So if you value, for example, quality time, maybe one of your needs is focused one-on-one attention. So what do you need based on the thing that you value? If you value physical touch, maybe you have a need for um, physical affection, or let's see, maybe you have a need for cuddling. Maybe you have a need for uh, sexual intimacy or foreplay. So in that middle column, go ahead and write what your needs are. In the last column, you're going to write, I will honor that by, or my boundary is. So what you're doing here is you are going to create a container in which those needs can be met. So for example, again, if your value is quality time, then you have a need for focused one-on-one connection, then perhaps you'll honor that need by creating a weekly date night without technology. So the boundary you're creating is no technology during your date night. So deciphering your values and needs can help you understand how to create boundaries so that those needs can be met. So that's one really easy exercise. Now, part two to this is once our boundary is crossed, or if our boundary is crossed, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with, it doesn't always feel good. And having a boundary crossed is sometimes where we know the boundary exists, or how we know that there's a boundary somewhere. Oftentimes, we're not aware of boundaries until they get crossed. So if it's available to you, um, looking at a cross boundary as a piece of information, a way that you can understand, okay, this doesn't feel good, there's a boundary here, now I'd like to do something about it. So here's a way to communicate, a really, really simple format to communicate when a boundary has been crossed. So again, on a piece of paper, you can write down this simple format. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach graphics in the show notes of this podcast episode to Instagram posts that I've created that give you the 3-column chart as well as this easy to use format. So here's the format. My boundary was crossed when blank. I felt blank. My need for blank was unmet. And my request is blank. Is that something you're willing or able to do? So my boundary was crossed when. You're going to fill this in with a specific observable behavior or event. So my boundary was crossed when you touched my thigh without my permission. So something that's specific and observable so that the person you're sharing this with knows exactly what you're referring to. I felt blank. You're going to fill this in with an emotion. I felt angry and I felt upset. My need for blank was unmet. My need for consideration was unmet. My need for giving my consent and permission before receiving physical touch was unmet. My request is that blank. Now you're going to make a request. So this is how we are putting boundaries in place. So my request is that before touching me, you ask for my permission. Is that something you're willing and able to do? So this is a really simple and easy format that you can use. And I borrowed on some of the nonviolent communication format and remixed it to help create a fill in the blank template for how to communicate when your boundary was crossed. So what you have here is, one, learning more about your values, your needs, and the boundaries you need to put in place in order to get your needs met. And then a simple and easy to use fill in the blank format to communicate when a boundary was crossed in a way that's compassionate, that shares your personal experience, and that makes a direct request. So hopefully the person on the receiving end can meet that need and honor that boundary next time. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please go ahead and drop a comment. Go ahead and share this episode out with someone that needs to hear this. And if it was helpful, then go ahead and screenshot this episode and share it out on social media. Be sure to tag me at Linoto_. And if the content on this podcast is valuable for you, I really invite you to subscribe, leave a rating and a review, and share this with other women and individuals in your network that could really benefit from this information. Thank you so much. I'm wishing you much love and good vibes.